before we begin, I feel like I need to show you the coolest Christmas jumper ever. I think it is anyway. I love the nostalgia of this one. Are you ready? I can't sing, I'm tone deaf. Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. So today's video, I think is quite an exciting one, but I feel like it's going to divide constant readers. I feel like people might come after me. I feel like my opinions may be seen as wrong. I'm going to be ranking all of the Stephen King books that I've read thus far. I will say that none of these books I hated, really. There is one that I did dislike, which I will show you first. And I know a lot of people do like it, so sorry in advance. As far as Stephen King goes, I'm a very new Stephen King reader. I only got into his books in sort of October time last year. It's been just over a year now, and I've only read 8 books so far. Technically 7.5, we're gonna count it as 8. I know I'm really slacking with how many books I need to read. I've just been in the worst reading slump recently, so I've just not picked up any books. Other than the ones that are on the list, I have also tried to read Bag of Bones, Different Seasons, Cujo. I started The Green Mile and I still haven't finished that. Salem's Lot, It as well. Started that. Got a bit scared by the size.
That's what she said.
So I think I might make this a yearly thing where I rank all of the Stephen King books that I've read. I mean, there's a lot of people on BookTube who have read a lot more Stephen King than I have, and they've done big lists of like their worst to their best, and I love watching these videos so much. If you want to see like what other people have read and their thoughts, check out their videos. I thought it'd be fun to do it myself, and then as I read more King books I can sort of update it until like we get to the point where I've read all of them, because I would like to at some point, even though that means that I gotta finish the stand, which is like 1108 or something pages, and that's stressing me out, but it's fine. If you've got different opinions, like obviously feel free to leave them in the comments, but please be kind. I am a new Stephen King reader even though I've got quite the collection now. But reading Stephen King and collecting Stephen King, 2 completely different hobbies. Okay, so I will jump into the list. In at number 8, we have The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and this was a book that I didn't enjoy. I give this one 2 stars, and I just couldn't get into it, and it just fell a little bit flat for me. I enjoyed the idea of the book, but I didn't enjoy the execution so much, and I found the ending rather strange. I'm not sure if anyone else has got this. I mean, Stephen King is known for his strange choices for the endings, and this definitely was one. It was intriguing, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, it's about like a child, and I think the way in which the writing is written, it doesn't feel as though it's written from the perspective of a child. It feels like it could easily be an adult that's lost in the woods. And if you're not familiar with the plot, I won't give any spoilers, but it's about a girl who goes missing and she loves Tom Gordon, who's a baseball player, I believe. As you can see, it's only a short book. That's why I picked it up, because I thought I'd be able to fly through it, and actually it took me a lot longer to read than I thought that it would. But there is an illustrated edition that's like got loads of like, it's like a pop-up illustrated edition. I really do want to get my hands on that, because I feel like reading that would probably make this book a little bit more interesting. You will notice a theme here that I have started with the smaller Stephen King books. If you've never seen my channel before, big books daunt me. I do like reading them, but I've definitely got to be in like the right frame of mind, which is why I always tend to gravitate towards the smaller books and tend to give up sometimes if I'm not into a longer book straight away. But I do really want to tackle some of Stephen King's larger books soon. In at number 7, we have Cycle of the Werewolf, and this is one that maybe those who are not like constant readers, Stephen King collectors, would know about. So it is like a graphic novel of sorts. It basically goes through the whole year, and it is the cycle of a werewolf, and it follows like the werewolf and what happens. You have some like illustrations. I wouldn't go as far as saying this is a graphic novel. As you can see, like there is a lot of text, but there's also like amazing artwork in there as well. And this is one that a lot of sort of fans don't tend to like as much, but I did really enjoy it. I think I give this one 4 stars. The only thing that sort of let it down is the length. I feel like this could have been like a full novel and it would have been really, really interesting, but it is quite brief. I know putting brief and Stephen King in one sentence is like unheard of, but this book does. In at number 6, now I feel like this is where maybe I'll divide opinions. A lot of people are going to be like, oh my god, you've put this one in at number 6? What? But it is Carrie. And I read this one second. So this came off the back of my favourite Stephen King book, so I think that is why it's sort of ranked lower. I did really enjoy it. I think I give it 3 stars, but in all honesty I think it's probably a 4-star read, because when I actually think about the writing, I think about the plot, like it was so genius and like it was like nothing that had been written at the time. And obviously this is Stephen King's first book, so you know, you have to give him like kudos for that, because this for a first book, I know it wasn't like the first book that he wrote, but it's his first published work and it's fantastic. If you've been living under a rock, Carrie is about a girl who has powers and she has telekinesis, and basically it just follows her through school and she's like bullied, and it's sort of her coming to terms with her powers. And what I found really interesting, so her mother is really religious, so there's like that sort of like battle between like her mother and her and like religion. It's not a very long read, and if you're somebody who's looking for a book to get into Stephen King but you don't want to go for anything like too major straight away, I definitely check Carrie out. My opinion of it is skewed slightly just because of how much I enjoyed the other book. And you know, sometimes when you get a book hangover and you're like, oh, I don't know what else to read, like it was that sort of thing. So I don't think anything was ever going to live up to the first book, because that was amazing. In at number 5, this is one that a lot of people are probably going to be like, what? Are you okay? Like, are you actually okay though? I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought than I would, but I've still got a few mixed opinions on this. Billy Summers, and this is Stephen King's latest release. This was my first experience reading a new Stephen King book, and I was pleasantly surprised. There were things in this book, the way he deals with certain sensitive topics, I personally didn't think that he dealt with them in the best kind of way, but that's sort of like a reflection on the character rather than Stephen King as a writer. But the way in which women are described and sexualized, I mean, this is a whole thing in Stephen King's work. Like, I could do a whole video on this. If you check out my reading vlog, I do like explain about my thoughts and opinions on this book in more detail, so I'll leave that in the comments if you did want to sort of have a little look at my wider thoughts on this book and Stephen King and women and how he writes them. It was very different to his other books, but not in a bad way. I thought the writing was good. I enjoyed like the first third and the last third, and the middle third kind of lost me a little bit. It felt almost like 2 books. Couldn't get over the ending. That shocked me. I know a lot of people are going to probably give me hate for putting it above Carrie, but the thing is, I've only read 8 books so far, so the likelihood is this isn't going to stay like in my top 10. Now we're on to like the final 4, and these are the ones that like I really enjoyed. In at number 4 we have Misery. I really enjoyed it. If you don't know what Misery is, it's about an author who is in a car crash and he is saved by like his biggest super fan, and basically she like looks after him. So the author has sort of finished his series, and basically the fan was not happy with the ending and makes him write like a new book, and is a lot. Like, but what I loved about this book is that it's only centered around 2 characters really, and it's pretty much all set in one room. I mean, there are some parts that are not set in the room, they're set in like other parts of the house. I was like, oh my god, this book is actually really good. If you are a new Stephen King fan, this is definitely another one that I feel like you could start with, and you get a good idea of like Stephen King's writing and like how talented he is. In at number 3, this is a bit of a weird one because I've not actually finished this book. I'm already enjoying it, but just the reading slump is making me not want to pick it up, which is so silly because I know that it's really good. So I'll show you what book it is. It is The Shining. Never watched the whole of the Shining film either. I don't have a real preconceived idea of what The Shining should be like. Love the characters. I just think like the whole setting in the Overlook Hotel is really, really interesting. Number 2 and number 1 are very, very, very close together, and it was a struggle to know which one to put first. But while I do love these books, ultimately number 1 is like, in my eyes, it's almost perfect. Like, I love it so, so, so much. So I'll show you number 2. This is a weird one because I feel like, as a fairly new Stephen King fan, you might look at this book and go, oh, I'm really surprised that you've picked up this one, because it's one that like a lot of Stephen King readers who are sort of like casual readers would never entertain the idea of reading. But I love this so, so much, and it is Rosemarys. And yes, I do have a lot of sticky notes because I love this book. I took part in a read along on Instagram run by Strictly Stephen King, and if you've not read Rosemarys yet, I love how it matches my hair. Sandra is doing another read along. She does it every year, so if you do want to read this and you've not read it yet, I'd 100% recommend joining a read along. I like put down every day a certain amount that I was going to read to make sure that I was like reading in time for the discussions, but I ended up like flying through this because I just couldn't put it down. I will say there is a lot of trigger warnings in this. It's not a light book, so don't go into it lightly. But yeah, it's a weird one because it's one that I know a lot of Stephen King fans enjoy, but then they read it and they're like, what? Like, you get sort of about 2/3 of the way into the book, and the last third, the first 2/3 are like pretty normal, and then you get to the last third and you're like, what am I reading? And I will be honest, it did get to a point where I was like, what?
What did you say?
Like, it does get a bit weird, but Rose is like my all-time favourite character. This is a book where Stephen King gets writing from a woman's perspective so right. The characters in this are fantastic.
Norman Daniels, I hit myself in the face.
Have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine. But
Norman Daniels is the most terrifying character. When we talk about like evil characters, like he is like the evilest of characters. Like, oh my god, I wanted to punch him in the face. There's so much going on. It leaves you guessing. It leaves you with like your heart in your mouth. Like, I was literally lying there in the bath for one day and my heart was racing, and do you know when you like want to scream at a character, you're like, no, run. It was fantastic. Such a good book. I can't see this one and the other book, this number 1, ever like shifting from my top. I mean, I've got a long way to go with King, but oh my god, this book is incredible. You definitely have to read it if you've not read it already. This book, this number 1, is not only my favourite Stephen King book, but I feel like is one of my favourite books of all time. Like, that is how much I love this book. And I feel like that's a bold statement to make, but honestly, it blew my mind. I loved it so much so that as soon as I read it, I was like, I need to devour every other Stephen King book. But you know when you love a book so much and nothing else yet has compared to it? So it is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I love this edition. I picked this one up in a car boot sale. This is my all-time favourite Stephen King book. I must sound like a weirdo now. I love messed up books. I love books that sort of make you question the characters, that sort of like hit you from sideways. I shouldn't say that. Oh my god. That was so harsh when you think about the plot. I didn't mean it like that, sorry. Don't get me wrong, there are some parts where I was like, okay, come on, let's hurry the plot up, because you know what Stephen King's like in the way that he writes. But I loved it. It was sick, it was twisted, it was not scary, but it gave an insight into the mind of somebody who's just mad with grief. I love church. I feel like if I have another cat, just on principle, I have to call it church. I loved all the characters. I think it was so good. And like, I did have some idea of what was going to happen in terms of the plot, but I didn't quite realise like how dark it gets. If you're not aware of what the plot is, a doctor called Lewis Creed moves to Maine, him, his wife and their 2 children, and basically behind their house is like a pet cemetery, and it's spelled like cemetery with an S because it's children that have done it, that's why it's wrong if you're wondering. And basically like the cemetery sort of leads to somewhere else. They're on like a main road, and the main road is like full of like trucks that come down really quickly. I won't say too much, but it is very good. Like, I think Stephen King's writing is so good in this book. Like, honestly, I don't think anything is going to beat it. And if you are looking to get into Stephen King and you don't mind gore, you don't mind books that are quite messed up, definitely start with Pet Sematary. You won't be disappointed. Like, for so long I put off reading Stephen King because I've always loved horror books. I've always loved like anything to do with like horror, anything dark. Like, it's always been my jam ever since I was like very young. But I never read Stephen King because I was so scared to start, because I was like, what if I don't like the king of horror? Can you imagine like someone who loves horror that doesn't like Stephen King? What? I just put off reading his books, and I'm so glad that I did finally get into Stephen King because of Pet Sematary. These are the 8 Stephen King books that I've read so far. What do you think of my list? Do you agree? Do you think that like I'm an abomination for putting Tom Gordon below Billy Summers and Carrie not featuring first? Let me know in the comments what your favourite Stephen King book is so far, and what your least favourite Stephen King book is, because I always find that really interesting, because I feel like with Stephen King fans we've all got such like a wide variety of like preferences and tastes with his books, and none of his books are really like super similar, so it's interesting to see which one people like cling on to as like their favourite. Please be kind to the comments, don't hate on me too much. If you do enjoy my content, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, I always post like Stephen King videos. That would mean a lot. I will see you soon in another video. Bye!